Hello and welcome back to Back Corner Comics. Today I wanted to highlight some amazing horror titles to read in the new year. So these are titles that I completely stand behind. So let's get into it. Okay, and the first book that we're going to be talking about is David Burke and Nicholas McCarthy and Benjamin Marra's Disciples. So, as you can tell, this looks like an old 70s or 60s movie poster, and that's because it takes place during that time and a little during modern time, but also it was originally a screenplay that was adapted by Benjamin Marra into the book that we have today. And so Fantagraphics did an amazing job, dressing this up and making it feel like a proper, deluxe product. You get this great dust jacket and these great end folds. So yeah, let's flip through it. So this is a great story about like a generational trauma that happens with a cult, and a young woman gets wrapped up in a cult because of her friend. I do not want to say more because I do not want to spoil the whole thing, but the villain within this story is really good. The main character and the main character's daughter are phenomenal. There's like a bit of a switch between the main character and the main character's daughter where, the daughter becomes the main character in the second half of the story. Like I said, it takes place into, in two different time periods. It's a lot of fun, very very creepy, very slow. It's a slow build. I could easily see this becoming a 24 movie. Phenomenal stuff. Definitely pick it up. This is The Disciples. Next up on the list is going to be Orochi by Kazuo Umez, and this is a great manga. There is, I believe, 4 or 5 volumes, just 4 volumes. I just looked at my shelf. But yeah, there's 4 volumes, and they're all short stories. And sort of like the narrator is this character here, Orochi, and she has her own plot that develops throughout the volumes. But the main focus is a variety of horror specific stories that happen to people. Most of them are like trauma based, and they have this, that typical Kazuo Umez dynamism that we all love and enjoy when it comes to, his stories and his plots. And yeah, let's get into it. So Kazuo Umez is a great mangaka. As you can tell, it's super cool. This is a great addition by Viz. I think they're doing the Kazuo Umez library justice by providing all of his titles in these nice, beautiful hardcovers. It first started with Drifting Classrooms, and kind of now we have Ume or Orochi, and yeah. So these stories are gothic in nature. Sometimes this is like a little bit of a gothic story where it focuses on obsession, and there's a mother daughter thing going on. Great stuff. And the coolest thing is that you don't have to pick up every volume, but when you start getting the bits and pieces of Orochi's story, this is Orochi. When you start getting bits and pieces of Orochi's story, you kind of want to continue and to like know the whole plot. There's some wicked stuff in these stories. Fun horror. If you're into body horror, if you're into, gothic horror, this is definitely for you. As you can tell right here, that's pretty hardcore. It's one of the tamest books on the list. Actually, maybe not. It's like up there in terms of the goriest. We're going to look at some really gory stuff in a little bit. But yeah, this is Orochi. They're these great little short stories packaged in these wonderful hardcovers. And yeah, let's go to the next. So our next title is Brain Damage by Shintaro Kago. I've previously done an overview of this particular book, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but this is extremely gory. So Shintaro Kago typically does uroguro. You can look into what that means, but it's typically a very, very gory type of, sexual fueled type of comic thing. And this is no exception. This is a collection of amazing short stories. I believe there's 4 of them in here. I don't want to show too much because I do not want my channel to get in trouble. And then also on top of that, I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. Here is, let's go here. So you're getting like these four surreal stories by Shintaro Kago. This is like a typical slasher story. It's a lot of fun. Cursed Room is like a take on the Cursed Room type of movie story that is very popular in Japan. Family Portrait is really weird. This is my least favorite in the entire collection. I don't think it's that good, to be honest with you, but hey, it's good. At the end of the day, it's still good horror. It's Shintaro Kago. And then Blood Harvest has to be my favorite. It is interesting, it is fun, it is different, and the type of, you know, violence in that is not what you would normally see in a horror book. So as you can tell just from this is extremely gory. Kind of just want to show you guys a little bit and get used to the art here. But I did a whole overview on this. See, very gory. I did a whole overview on this, so if you are interested in this, I recommend watching that overview if you want a little bit more on this particular release. But it's a lot of fun. Nobody does it quite like Shintaro Kago when it comes to Uroguro. I'm a big fan. I have a few of his titles that I would like to talk about, but again, I'm afraid of getting in trouble with YouTube. So yeah, this is Brain Damage. On to the next. So Slash Them All by Antoine Maillard is a amazing suburban type of horror that has these elements of surreal backing everything. And you know, this is another Fantagraphics release, and it's a beautiful hardcover, and they presented it just like a movie poster, just like Disciples. I think they released the same year, ironically enough, and so I love that maybe there was this, you know, push to have these uh, books stand out a little bit more. But yeah, look at that. That is obviously reminiscent of Halloween. If you've ever seen that, you know, evil has plans of its own. So this is like a typical slasher in terms of the setup, but then in execution, it is completely different. Very surreal, very dreamy. The art is fantastic. You know, it starts with this black and white, you know, setting up the killer. This reminds me of a famous Satoshi Kon anime. The name is eluding me. I'm sure I will remember afterwards. But yeah, look at this here. Just spooky stuff. Bit of a dream sequence there. Oh, the whole thing is in black and white. I forgot about that. For some reason, I remembered it in color. But you can tell that this is, you know, done by, I think he's French. I'm sorry if you're not French, if you are watching this, or if you know the cartoonist. But he does a lot of like editorial art and stuff like that. Fun stuff. I follow him on Instagram. But the work in here is just fantastic. The ending is very surreal. I really enjoyed my time with this book. I have not revisited it since looking through it here, but I am getting the hankering to read it again, to be honest with you. So, yeah, typical romance stuff. Very good. It definitely deserves to be picked up and read. So, on to the next. So, Richard Sala is easily one of the best American cartoonists, especially when you go into the arena of horror specific stories. And recently, Fantagraphics reprinted Night Drive, which was Sala's like breakout zine, which gave him, you know, the ability to, you know, bust into the industry and really make all the amazing comics he's made. And Night Drive was a fantastic read this year. It barely did not make my top 10, you know, of the past year, but here Fantagraphics have reprinted it in a wonderful hardcover. And you can tell that it is amazingly designed. And if you know anything about Daniel Clowes, this maybe looks familiar, and that's because he designed it, you know. But yeah, Night Drive is this strange collection of stories that are like half finished. Sala wanted to experiment. This is the original cover of the zine. Sala wanted to experiment with this idea that these are all like serial stories that begin and end, and that's it. There's no follow up to them. And I like that idea. It kind of hurts a little bit because I could read 1,000 pages of this stuff, but it moves very fast. It's very surreal. You can easily see why this, made him a name in the underground comic scene and the indie comic scene. Very much of the Halloween type of horror that we all love. But yeah, good stuff. There's a bunch of bonus material here in the back that was a plan to be the follow up to Night Drive, but Richard Sala very wisely decided not to do that and to focus his energies on other works, which I think it was, a sound idea. And if you're familiar with the Liquid Television uh, program that MTV had back in the day, you're going to know that, of course, one of the stories, Invisible Hands, was adapted there. And so here, Klaus put various frames of that onto the backing of this book. Again, amazingly designed, a lot of fun. That is Night Drive by Richard Sala. So, if you're familiar with Barry Windsor-Smith, you know that he has this very storied career in American comics. You know that he's done stuff at Marvel, he's done stuff for various publications. He did this amazing self published, unfinished epic over at Dark Horse called The Storyteller. It's very sad that that was never finished, but whatever. There was a famous Hulk story that he wanted to do that Marvel shot down and didn't want to move forward with. And so he kind of took that and done his greatest last work, which is Monsters. And this is published by Fantagraphics. I remember when they announced this, I was very ecstatic because I was in the middle of reading the, notorious Conan the Barbarian with Barry Windsor Smith. And so, when I finally got this in, I was so ecstatic to read it. And it was easily one of the best graphic novels I ever read. If you're looking at this list and you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to get this or I'm going to get that, I really think it should be Monsters because it is a quality story. It's a quality, collection, all of the above. It really excels at being something different. And so, it's this typical monster story where you have this monster here and you get like an inkling in the beginning of what happened to him. As you can tell already, it's like the artwork here is phenomenal. He has said that this is the last thing that he'll ever do, which you look at this and you can kind of understand why. But you see this monster, he goes on the loose. He's this like, the government did stuff to him, made him like this freak, and he just kind of rampages through just like a Hulk, or just like the Hulk. And so you can easily see that this was the Hulk portion of the story. But Barry Windsor Smith really takes it up a few notches when he starts going back in time to show why this guy became the monster that he ended up becoming, and what led him there, not physically, but psychologically. And you get into these reminiscing about the abuse that he suffered at his father's hand, and then it goes into like his mother's perspective, and you get this amazing calligraphied portion where most of it is done in cursive. Barry Windsor Smith really went all the way with this series, or this in this particular story, and it is just a phenomenal read all the way through. Easily a highlight of Fantagraphics catalog, and probably some of the best cartooning done in the past 20 years, you know? So I totally recommend picking up Monsters. It was a fantastic read. I'm going to try to read it every year. And yeah, maybe I'll do a proper review on it. That would be really cool. It'd be cool to do like a book club thing on this, have a bunch of people read it and, all of us discuss, the book. But yeah, so next up, is the Idris file by Dixs. So this is like a it's like a YA novel, but not for YA, and very graphic and kind of horror specific. So it takes place on or in a Welsh seaside village. This boy and his mother go to this little village so his mom can help take care of this old man in a way. So she becomes like a caretaker. They don't have a lot of money. And this book is very trippy. It opens in a very like small, quiet way, and then the story sort of blossoms into this like Nazi conspiracy. It's a bit of a ghost story. I don't want to give too much away, but this is really a great read to pick up, and it's just like one of those horror movies that are like an hour and 30 minutes, and you can pick it up and read it in one sitting. That's how I read it and enjoyed it. The line work is fantastic by Dix. Typically, Dix works with a writer, but here he is doing both. And I think it's a lovely debut from him. I had a lot of fun with this. I don't want to go too much into it because it's short and, you know, I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, so this is the Idris file. Pick it up. It is a great addition to your horror reading list. Last but definitely not least is Spa by Eric Sventoft. I hope I said that correctly. Eric is an amazing cartoonist, and when I saw this solicited years ago, I was very excited for it. I picked it up at my local Books and Books, and I did not regret it. So this is like a surreal horror, and it touches on corporation like corpo stuff. As you can tell right there, very creepy. And it goes from being a typical story, where you're following along with certain characters, and then it just dives straight down into surreal imagery and stuff like that. But it is about a spa that is kind of like being haunted by these monsters in a way. Again, it's very loosey goosey in terms of exactly what's going on. It is like a very like horror type of deal, very Lynchian, and like as you can tell right there, very Lynchian. The horror is quiet and not very loud, and it's sudden and very violent in there, and then it's gone. It follows this guy who's the head of a corporation now, and his father left it to him. It's been a while since I read it, so I'm a little murky on the plot details, but it follows like different characters that are going through this spa, and you have these two like repair men who work in the spa, and they look very strange. You know, they're kind of what they do is always left up into the air, and then boom, you get like into like some crazy horror stuff. This is one of the characters that the story follows. Just like all these other books on the list, I don't want to spoil anything, or show you too much. But this is a really good pickup. I think all of these books are great, and I stand by every single one of them. So if you are trying to, you know, bolster up your horror library, I recommend every single one of these books to have them ready for the fall season, or of course when you want to read them. But yeah, so these are the horror books that I recommend for you to read in the new year. I enjoy every single one of these, and like I said, I stand by every single one of them. This is Back Corner Comics. Thank you for watching.